NCUA board member Rick Metsger discussed the outcome of the December board meeting with the Credit Union Times here at the NCUA headquarters. First, I want to ask about the charitable donations final rule. You voted in support of it. Do you think that that rule was necessary at this time for credit unions, and why?
I do. I really appreciate the comments we received from folks about it. It seemed to be so straightforward, and then when we got comments, we understood there's some technical issues. For example, the OCC supervision being duplicative, say for SEC, and a lot of things that we didn't really totally understand, and that allowed that rule to be better. So that's the first part, to tell credit unions that their comments are really, really critical to making rules most effective. Raising that from 3 to 5% based on the comments because of increased your earnings, if you're successful, shouldn't be a negative to running a charitable account. I think what it also does, and why it's valuable, is that charity in communities has always been part of the credit union, a mantra, no matter what community they're in, and you do want to maximize those returns. By isolating this into a CDA to allow them to involve themselves in investments under a limited scope for the purpose of charitable giving, allows them to have that opportunity for greater returns without risking their everyday operations, of which safety and soundness is important. So keep in mind, they've always been able to make charity donations, and that's never been limited. What we've done is take one portion of how they can invest the money they're already in contributing to charity and putting it in one particular way to perhaps maximize returns without jeopardizing safety and soundness of the overall credit union.
So a lot of the commenters said that they wanted the 3% raise to 5%. Is that something that you think is an advantage now for credit unions? Why is it beneficial?
I think they made a good case, and as you heard in the open board meeting, that this is consistent elsewhere in the regulatory environment, and that it was not a safety and soundness issue. And we didn't want to get to a situation where you penalize success of that account. So you put in 3%, and all of a sudden it grows to 3.5% or 4% in the first year. You have to make mandatory distributions of that, and perhaps your agreement with certain charities doesn't allow that to actually be totally materialized, or you have poor returns one year. You don't want to be in a situation either where you have to make distributions before, which is why we have the 5-year rule. So I think it's a really good balance.
Now, on the home-based credit union rule, the proposed rule, you agree with some of board member Freisel's comments, some of Chairman Matt's comments. Why did you ultimately support the proposed rule?
Well, I think there was 2 elements to that, as you know. The first one was safety of examiners. As I said in the open board meeting, you don't want to wait to have a problem and then have to ask, how come you didn't recognize and do something about it before we had this? We all know how that works. And I think it is time to recognize that is a responsibility of the regulator to make sure our examiners have public places in which they can examine records and feel safe and secure and not going to a personal residence. In terms of moving the few that we have that are still home-based to public spaces, again, I think that's also important. We talk about identity theft, we talk about cybersecurity, all the things in the last 10 years that have put additional risks onto all financial institutions and individuals. To have those types of records and accesses in a home-based credit union, I think in today's age exposes greater risk than ever existed before. I think it is our fiduciary responsibility to protect the individual members, and as a result of any activities that might actually compromise that, not only their personal information, but perhaps access to credit union accounts, could have potentially impact the share insurance fund. So I think it is our responsibility to protect both the individual members and the integrity of the fund safely and securely, and do that in a public place.
Board member Freisel said the NCUA, in his view, doesn't have the authority to require home-based credit unions to move their location into a public space or commercial building. And then he also said that this could ultimately, if it passed, could maybe make a small credit union liquidate or merge. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that. As I have examined the credit unions that we're talking about, a lot of them are not making loans. I mean, they're they have essentially just become saving institutions, and which they have a right to do that. But in terms of whether it's going to have a negative impact on the credit union one way or another, I don't believe that. You will find that in a lot of these, if not the majority, of these small credit unions that are home-based, use credit union funds to pay a stipend to the person who is operating that at home. Well, so you use that stipend to put it in a public place that's more secure for the records, for your members. I don't know how comfortable you would feel. I know I wouldn't necessarily feel very comfortable going into someone's home to conduct my personal business. I would feel much more comfortable. And I think in today's day and age, a federal institution should be under the protections of some public space.
And how about the rule in terms of, in general, examiner safety?
Mm-hmm.
We saw the ammunition example for, that I'm sure you've heard about.
Mm-hmm.
What are ways that maybe could be considered in the future to protect examiners, possibly coordinating with the local police department and any other measures you could think of?
Well, you don't want to use an elephant gun on a flea, so we're not going to assume that everything is a hazardous situation. I think if you have known information, you do want to act on that in any case, but we're not under the assumption that there is inherently a risk, for an examiner's safety in general. But when we identify the isolationism of a private residence, we know that can be a potential hazard. As I mentioned in the open board meeting, my experience with home health nurses, similar situation where there has been instances of safety for that individual. You can certainly translate that to an examiner. That is a known risk. We want to get ahead of the risk. We don't want to do it after the barn door has been closed and have to deal with a very difficult situation.
Well, thanks for your time in discussing the developments of the board meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nick.
At the NCUA headquarters in Alexandria, Virginia, I'm Nicholas Balassi, and thanks for watching.